Yes.
Okay, folks. So I'm going to talk. Well, before I start talking about this, I just wanted to just express my opinion about the project so far. I wasn't aware that there was certain things that people felt they needed more information about, or needed to know how to better coordinate this. So it's new to me. I'll just explain things from my perspective. That first of all, it gives me joy to be part of the project. Secondly, everything I've seen today seems to be pretty well coordinated. Every presentation, I've looked and seen a thread of continuity through everything. And in fact, even with my presentation, we may see some things that mirror what you've done. So I'm very happy and proud to be part of this project, and I feel spirited by being here today. So without further ado, I'm going to talk about the landscape musician. Now, this presentation will be a little bit scattershot, because I've been in the throes of marking students' work for the last couple of weeks, so I haven't really had time to think everything through in detail, whereas we're at such an early stage of the research, I thought it would be okay, because we're going to sort of develop this as we go along. So I'm going to talk about the guitar as an interface between impression and expression. So I don't know whether to stand or sit, but I'll do it. Okay, so my perspective on this is to how to express an experience through landscape. Now, we've already talked about different ways this can be done in different contexts. This morning we had a discussion about art and the impressionistic paintings of some, you showed Monet and people like that, which was pretty interesting. I have here a few examples as well, Turner and Constable. These are sort of idyllic paintings of the Impression epoch in art. And really is a romanticized sort of ideal of the countryside. So in a way, this is an impressionistic representation of environment, of the different perspectives on a specific landscape. Now, I'm doing this just to contextualize, I suppose, what I'm trying to do, as it can be quite confusing to express, and in some cases difficult to understand. Other examples of what I'm going to discuss today are done by composers such as Beethoven and Debussy. Beethoven wrote the Pastoral Symphony, which was inspired by his walks through the country. Beethoven was really intrigued by the countryside and got a lot of inspiration from that. And his Pastoral Symphony is a representation of those experiences. So I'm just going to play a little bit of music. One of the reasons I'm playing the music as well is just to break it up so you don't hear my voice constantly. Example I wanted to play was Nuage from the Three Nocturnes by Debussy. Debussy was inspired to write this piece after sort of looking at the floating clouds moving very slowly through the sky during the sunset. And he sort of captures this in this piece of music I'm about to play you. So just to contextualize the idea, if you can just sort of imagine a sunset, a red sort of sunset with clouds moving through the sky. This is Debussy's interpretation of that. So the reason I guess I'm showing this is because I had this idea of performing in different environments about 2 years ago. And it was in the back of my mind of how could I, you know, be an improvising musician in a different environment, an environment that was less than conventional. And so I started trying to find examples that would help me to articulate what it was that I was trying to do, what I still am trying to do. And it seemed to me that, well, obviously there's many great artists and composers, and I'm not comparing myself to these great artists at all, but it was just useful for me to sort of use it as a yardstick by which to measure what I was trying to do in my research. I then got hold of a copy of The Soundscape, a book by Murray Schafer, which was published in 1977. Interesting, a lot of things that you were talking about earlier on, Carlos, sort of resonated with this book. I think Schafer would have really liked you, because what he's talking about is there's a lot of textual history. Archaeologists find lots of different sort of objects, artifacts from many, many years ago, but there are no physical representations of sound. There's no history of sound. And it sounds like that's what you're trying to do, I assume, but I'm being presumptuous, is that you talk about every day trying to get a recording of the sound, and doing that every day and documenting that. And in a way, whether you're aware of it or not, you are kind of creating a history of sound that people can look back on in years to come. And other people who have been doing that in other different parts of the world for many years now. Maybe one day somebody can pull it all together, and then we can, build up a history of sound that could be something in the vision of what Schafer wanted, perhaps. This book is fascinating. I don't know if any of you have read this book, but just to create a bit of an overview, Schafer distinguishes between hi-fi and lo-fi sounds. So lo-fi sounds, well, I'll talk about hi-fi sounds first. His conceptualization of hi-fi sounds is sounds that are natural, sounds that happen in nature. We have these sort of new flashy terms that we use for that: geophony and biophony. So geophony is the sound of rain, wind, waves, and biophony is the sound of the natural, the birds, the animals, insects, things like that. And so lo-fi sounds are kind of a recent phenomenon, relatively speaking. He says that the lo-fi sounds became more prevalent during the Industrial Revolution, which started in England back in the 18th century. And noise pollution, as it's often called, has increased steadfastly since the 18th century. And these are categorized as lo-fi sounds: traffic, airplanes, industry, manufacturing, factories, things like that. So there's a demarcation between the two. Nowadays, like we talked today, some of you talked about the difficulty in trying to capture hi-fi sounds without any interruptions from, the postmodern world, I suppose. There's always something in the background. There's traffic noise, or there's aircraft, or there's some kind of noise that impedes on these hi-fi sounds, the natural sounds in nature, the biophony and the geophony. And that's one of the things that intrigued me, which I'll talk about more later, is when I met Nico, and the first time I went to Finland. And that was a real kind of eye-opener for me, because of its tranquility, at least the places that we went to. It was just so quiet, and something that I mean, there's beautiful places in England too, but you have to really go far, and you have to be lucky that you don't get interrupted by the sounds. But more on that later. So that was a really interesting thing for me that inspired me, or at least got me to think about my research, the research that I was going to do for this particular project. And also reading about ecomusicology, which is sort of a new field, and it's quite a broad field, and which is always a good thing, because it's open to many different sort of disciplines that can, of course, gravitate towards ecomusicology. And it is basically the critical study of music, sound, and environment. And of course, that's what a lot of us are doing here anyways. We're engaging in sound in specific environments. And currently, I'm studying It's called Ecological Psychology. I'm very interested in the works of William James, Edmund P. Holt, and James Gibson. I'll just quickly, I'm still trying to figure it out because I've done a few conferences on this area already, and people ask me different questions, and the last time I did it, somebody asked me, said, well, how do your research, how do we distinguish that? I'm saying it's my research, but obviously this research is an offshoot of this larger project. It's an offshoot of that, but it's also contributing to that. But somebody asked me, said, well, how do we distinguish from you playing the guitar on 4 feet of ice as being something that's of research value, or just a guy with a guitar playing on a frozen lake? And it got me thinking that, yeah, I don't want people to interpret it that way. So I had to find a way to articulate this and to sort of create a conceptual framework about around what I'm doing. So the ecological psychology of it is quite interesting, and I think has a place in the research too. It's how we experience the environment. There's the argument of the Cartesian dualism, which was René Descartes' idea about mind and matter. The brain is a physical thing. Thought is abstract and is not bound to any limitations. We can think of anything.
It's the dance seagulls again.
Nice pollution. That's okay, that's right. So I was talking about the Cartesian dualism, which is there's this separation between the physical world and the mind. And of course, ecological psychology is completely repudiates that idea. And there's a guy called Eric F. Clark who did a really interesting article about Jimi Hendrix's performance at Woodstock in 1969, Star Spangled Banner. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but at this concert, Jimi Hendrix did a guitar solo, and he uses all these interesting guitar effects and tries to emulate sounds of people crying and screaming, dive bombs, machine guns, all these things to kind of represent what was a very unpopular war at the time, the Vietnam War. And Eric F. Clark deconstructs it from an ecological psychology perspective. So a lot of people romanticize about Jimi Hendrix and that he was the spokesperson for a whole generation, all this kind of rock journalism speak, which is, it's kind of entertaining, but it's not really useful from a research perspective. And Eric F. Clark deconstructs the whole thing as we would actually hear it without any cultural references. When you see, if I put a picture of Hendrix now, you see him with a guitar, it conjures up a popular kind of idea of who he was, the clothing, the times, the fashion, the trends. And Eric F. Clark just gets rid of that and says, well, let's just listen to exactly what's happening. Listening to it as if you've never heard of Jimi Hendrix before. And that's the distinction that I'm trying to make in what I'm doing in the environment when I'm engaging with it. It's trying to forget about a preordained musical vocabulary and use something that is completely spontaneous, something that I haven't played ever before. That's based on direct perception, not on a preconceived notion. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about, some of you may be aware of this, but another form of inspiration for me in terms of this research was a Brazilian musician called Pedro Pascoal, who's a multi-instrumentalist, and Nico and I were talking about this last night. He's like one of these guys who's just, some people that we're a musician, I'm a musician, so if I to prove to you that I'm a musician, I would pick up a guitar and play it, or if I was a drummer, I would start playing the drums. But this guy, everything is music. He doesn't need an instrument to show you that he is the embodiment of music. And in this video, I'm going to show you a couple of clips that I've edited together to sort of demonstrate to the extent that this person is really the embodiment of music, because to him, anything can be music. He sees potential for music making in everything. So in the first clip, you see him performing on plates with cutlery, and the next clip after that, you'll see him with his group in a cave in Brazil somewhere, I don't know where it is, but the band are playing using beaters, mallets, you know, for usually using on microphones and ringers, playing the stalactites. So stalactites are those forms that, you know, they're in caves and they take years to form, and they're like deposits, water, salts, minerals, and things like that. And they just hang down the most interesting things, but they have pitches. So they're actually choosing ones to pitch, and Pasquale has this large horn and flowing through. And this is a really good example of the environment having an effect on the type of music that's being created. It's very primordial, if you like. It's really interesting. And then the third clip I'm going to show you is Pasquale and his band in sort of this lake, improvising. Pasquale is playing like a wooden flute, and his band are holding these bottles that have got different levels of water. So if you put water in a bottle, depending on how high or low the level of the water is, if you blow through the top, you can create pitches. So obviously they've got these bottles and they're determined, like I'll tell you now, the chord that they play is the major seventh chord. It's the first, third, fifth, seventh degree of the scale, and it moves down a tone, back up a tone, and down a tone. So they've obviously got, like, you know, Pasquale said, I want to improvise over these major seven chords, so I'll reach into this chord, and then we'll go down to a tone and then back up. And it's really wonderful to watch. And it's a wonderful example of musicians actually engaging without any preconception, without any sort of prior vocabulary, just in the moment improvisation. That was very inspirational in terms of how you could engage in the environment. The other thing that somebody brought to my attention was Karl-Heinz Stockhausen's performance at the Jeta Caves in Lebanon. Has anybody ever seen this? This was a huge project back in 1969. The Jeta Caves, they sort of go on, they're quite elongated cave, if you like. And you walk through it, and there's water, and you sort of have to duck and dive, and the cave opens and it closes, and it's a fascinating sort of formation. And they obviously found a place that was acoustically sound where they could capture these sounds. I mean, they've got a grand piano in the cave, so that must have been a logistical task to try and get the grand piano in this cave. And they have some electronic instruments and violins and different things. And it's kind of improvised. They've obviously found certain frequencies, certain articulations that they play on their instruments that gets that reverberation, getting those sort of molecules moving around. And I think the delay time it's around about 6 or 7 seconds, which doesn't seem like much, but it's a lot. It's a lot. So a really resonant environment to play in. So I'll just play a little bit of that. so I just want to talk a little bit now. So this is a picture of me at the Fens, a place called the Fens, which is essentially marshland in Cambridge. And this was around about February, so I'll just give you a little background information about how I became good friends with Nico. Around about November, December 2023, Nico sent me an email about a video, I think, from one of my videos from my YouTube channel. And we just sort of corresponded via email, and we had a shared interest in the music of Frank Zappa, and some other shared interests that we discussed. And we got into talking about, maybe me coming out to Finland and, performing in these landscapes. And so we talked about that over a few months, and before I actually came out, a month before I came out to Finland, I went to the Fens, and I just wanted to try it out. While I'm speaking, I might just play you this so you can see. So this was the first time I had actually gone out with a guitar in an open space, just to see what it felt like, just to see how it felt, how it would inspire me. Would it inspire me? I didn't really know what would happen. So I had a technician from work who set up some microphones, and we sat next to this lake. There were birds singing, and I was feeling quite nice about that, and it inspired me to some extent. Just to get a feel. I mean, unfortunately, the Fens, this area is right next to the A14, which is a massive motorway that runs from Huntington into Cambridge, so you can always hear it in the background there. And there's a military Air Force base as well. So every now and then you get like a jet flying over. But it didn't matter, I wasn't going to do anything. I just wanted to get a feel for it and see how this would work. And then in...
do you mind upping the volume?
I'm afraid there's no sound, yeah.
No.
Not on this one. Yeah. And then in March, I applied for some research money from my university where I work. And at my university we have a thing called QR funding, which is quality research funding, which the council gives us and is shared amongst all the kind of creative people there. It's not much, it's about between 150 and 180,000 a year, but it's distributed amongst everyone in the creative department, creative school. And I applied for some money to come and visit Nico, and when I came out, I think it was in March last year. And I'm glad it was March because we had a phone call or a Zoom meeting, I can't remember, in January, and Nico was telling me, well, you could come out now, but it's minus 27. And he told me he went into his kitchen to make a cup of tea, and he couldn't get the kettle off because it was frozen to the base there.
No, it's just the milk was frozen by the window.
Right. Yeah. So I thought, okay, Nico, all right, thanks for letting me know. Maybe I'll wait until it gets a bit cooler. When I got out there, it was about minus 10. So it was cold, but it was okay. So I got to Nico's house, and Nico says, okay, if you're going to go out, you have to wear, the right clothing. And I'm a diminutive proportioned person, and he gave me this suit. It was like a space suit. It was huge. I was just like this, kind of walking around like a spaceman, with massive Wellington boots. But I was so grateful because you were right. You need that stuff when you're going out there. So the first place he took me was to Germajabe, which is a lake. And at that time of year it was frozen. And I remember, we were walking on there, and I was thinking, God, this is a bit scary. Because you hear stories of people going through the ice, right? And I was like, and then I kind of, he didn't say anything. I think he was trying to scare me. That's why he didn't say anything. And then I saw some tractor tracks along there, and I thought, well, if it can handle a tractor, then it's going to be okay. Anyway, I'm going to show you a video clip of that. That's just getting an idea of where we're going to set up and just getting a feel for the environment. Where are we now? This spot?
Well, this is called, the island coast is called Havukkasaari, Hawk Island. And so we are between, and there's Korpilahti, which means Korpi is like really dark forest, and Lahti is a bay.
Okay.
And this is Harvalahti, where we are going.
Okay. So we're going to set up somewhere down here.
Well, we'll walk about half a kilometer. Yeah.
Okay.
We're actually walking on a lake at the moment. What's the name of the lake, Miko?
Kervajärvi. Wow. It's Kerva's Creek.
Okay.
Cream Lake.
Cream Lake. I think we found the place, Miko.
Yeah.
Give it one more test for the camera. It's short but effective.
Yeah. Ah, the raven. Hey, the raven replied. Yes. Yeah.
So that was us getting set up. And then the next thing was to just try and, get some inspiration musically. So the first place we set up was on this little islet. And on this islet, I think was this hut we got set up there and put some microphones out. And I just started playing. There wasn't much in terms of, so this is kind of, you make mistakes or you try things out and they don't work. And I think this is an example of that. I have to say though, that the feeling and sensation I had of being on that island was quite profound. It was just so quiet. And as I said to you earlier on, I mean, I'm from the UK, and yes, there's some beautiful landscape there, but it's very difficult to get silence. It's always, because it's a small island, of course, It's very difficult to get absolute silence. So this, it's probably one of the first times I've ever experienced such tranquility, is being on that islet in that moment. And I was playing an acoustic guitar, which is an instrument that I was much more comfortable playing in an outside environment. Obviously, because of its lack of output, you don't get reverberations. That's why acoustic instruments, stringed instruments are generally better in smaller places, caves and things like that. But I'll show you a little clip. Obviously, you can show videos and you can try to explain it, but it's, being there is obviously a completely different experience. And later in the day, we set up on the actual ice, and I just play a little bit of this, so you can sort of hear the type of reverberation, the reflections that we were getting from the nearby cliffs. So at this point, I'm set up, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 feet in front of the cliffs, and I'm using a battery-operated amplifier that was kindly set up by Harry there, who's been just great in terms of helping us with the technical side of things. And so I'll play just a clip just so you can hear the type of reverberations we were getting in this place. So you can also hear the ravens in the back. There was one point where I'm actually having a dialogue with the ravens. I'm not sure if it's in this clip or another one, but yeah, it was a really interesting pretty special moment there when the actual raven was. I mean, I don't want to sound presumptuous, but you know, I don't know if it's. It's probably more like what you were talking about earlier on about you're in my territory. This is a sound that I'm not used to. What is that? You know. But nevertheless, it was a really interesting experience.
Well, I told you those ravens have actually they have musical education because my sister has been teaching them some folk songs already. So.
They're really intelligent as well. They're really intelligent. I was reading some. If they see a dead, freshly dead animal, they just sit on the animal. They can't get to bits that they need to. You know, bits that become carillion. They just sit on it and they make noises to attract larger animals that will come and eat it. And obviously, once they start to eat it, then they can come in and peck at it. They have all these strategies. They're very, very, very clever. I've seen about them. Very clever. So in May of last year, I then went to Herisau in Switzerland, and I did some recordings there at this covered bridge. Now, this covered bridge had some historical significance. It was built in the 18th century, and it was one of the first covered bridges to be built, because usually bridges back in the day were just built for horses to go over. They weren't covered, and so the elements after a few years would sort of, you know, rot away at the wood, and the wood would break, and then the bridge would just fall into the river. So this, I can't remember his name, I'm afraid. It's a complicated name to remember, but he had designed this bridge, and it was quite unique for the time because of the polygonal type of configurations that he used for the infrastructure of the roof. And so I played in there. I played a little clip of that so you can hear what that sounded like. So you could see outside there, had like a look out there, and you could see the birds and the things. So that was quite an inspirational place. But I was a little bit disappointed with my visit to Switzerland in terms of trying to get some interesting sounds. It wasn't quite the same experience as in Eversey. It was interesting, but it didn't really achieve what I set out to achieve. And also I learned that we actually went into the mountains. And you know that classic sound of the cows with the bells around the neck, you could hear that. So we recorded out in this mountain. It was sunny, it was beautiful weather, but there was just too much sound, too much nature. It was beautiful, but it was a cacophony of sound from birds and insects, crickets, you know, making really loud noises. And it was nice, but it just interfered with what I was playing, and I realized that, you know, there's already a symphony there that I don't need to add to it. So I realized that maybe I have to be a bit more discriminatory with the locations I choose. So in a way, that was a bit of a lesson that, you know, not all outdoor locations are necessarily good ones to perform or conducive for the type of thing that I was trying to do. And then later in the year, in August, I went to Walkmore by Sea. This is in South Wales, so I was born in South Wales, and this person you see with the acoustic guitar, his name's Fayan Zek, who's a musician. We both went to the same school, and it was really nice to get back together and to do something like this, something that was, you know, different, I suppose. And we found a sea crevice, and you can see right here this is the sea crevice. We went inside, and just outside, you know, maybe 20, 30 feet of sand, and then the water, the waves, and the sea were there. And you could hear it in the background. It was quite nice. And we could play the acoustic guitars because it was a confined space. But I wanted to involve somebody else so I could get a sense of, you know, when you're playing, if you're performing in a location, it's just yourself. You can judge it creatively. You can sort of analyze what you're doing. You can try to reflect on it. But when you have somebody else there, it can be very useful to see that, you know, is it really that good? Is it a nice place to play? You know, are we achieving the same objectives here? And it was interesting because we were playing in here, and I found it really interesting to play, a nice space, but my friend Fi was not comfortable. So that was quite interesting. I'll just play you so you can hear the sound first. So I thought we were having a good time, you know, we were interacting, exchanging forces and everything, and then when I asked Fi what did he think about it, he had this to say.
How do you feel about performing in this space?
In a weird way, I'm missing the sea. I know it's better for the wind, but I find it too enclosed. It's for, you know, I like to see this, I mean, for personal inspiration, I'd like to hear other gigs out from the entrance. Because the enclosement feels like more like being like a recording studio, you know, when you've got the walls around you. I mean, even though, yeah, it's light coming through and the sound, but it's, for me, it still feels that enclosement kind of takes me away from being out in nature.
I understand.
Now, I know it's ideal in terms of not having the wind noise,
Yeah.
but in terms of playing, I'd rather be more out there looking at the sea.
Yeah. Would you feel...
And hearing the sea more as well, because I feel like when I'm... It's almost like it's taking me out of the environment a little bit. The fact that the sea is there,
Yeah.
I can hear it faintly, or when you can see it, you can really hear it.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to play with the sea. I'm not interacting with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's too distant. It's like I'm in a room and the sea's out there. So that's one element I'm finding I'm missing from this particular location.
Do you think you'd feel differently if you could see the sea from this space?
Yes.
From where we are now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so after all that, I'm still in the throes of trying to figure out what it is that I'm doing. And after countless experiences playing in these locations, doing conferences, getting many questions from people from different conferences, it's making headway, it's making more sense to me. And I suppose one facet of it is that the first thing is, what is it that I'm doing? What is it that I'm trying to achieve by playing in these different locations? Well, I guess I want to know what it's like to not have any preordained ideas, musical ideas, before I get to a location. I'm a musician. I've been a musician for about 40 years now, and I've played in concert halls, theatres, bars, all over the place. And when you're in a concert hall or a theatre, you have an audience, you play in front of the audience, there are certain expectations. The audience have an expectation, you have an expectation, okay? And you have to have, first of all, you have to have an ego to be able to get on stage and act like a crazy person in the first instance, right? People think ego has negative connotations, and it can do, but an ego is essential for you to do what you do as an artist. Otherwise, you'd never get up on stage in front of people. You'd be terrified. So you have to have an ego to do that. But I realized that when I was performing on stage in these concerts, of course I have fun, I enjoy it, it's a wonderful experience, but when I'm playing, I'm thinking, well, I've got to remember that this part is coming up, I'm coordinating with the drummer and the bass player, this chorus is coming up, this middle 8 section is coming up, I've got to be ready for these coordinated, written, composed parts. The only time that a musician can really have freedom is when they're soloing, when they're improvising. And my vocabulary is essentially blues, rock, and jazz, so I use that vocabulary when I'm soloing. But I find that, yes, I can be spontaneous, but I keep using things that are already preordained, and that's not really what it's about. That's not true spontaneous improvisation. So I wanted to remove myself from that environment and be in a location that was alien to me to see what would happen. And I'm very grateful to Miko for facilitating this, which he has done for the last year or two, because if it wasn't for Miko, none of us would be here right now. We would have had the opportunity to play in these unique locations. And also, finally, I just want to talk about the experience we had last October with Mike Keneally. Now, Mike Keneally, if you don't know, is a American musician, guitarist, and composer. He played with Frank Zappa, he played with Stevie Joe Satriani, and he came over and stayed at Miko's house for a week in October, and Miko organised it so that we could play together. And this definitely wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Miko, and like I said, I'm really grateful. But I'm going to show you a little clip from our experience with Mike Keneally last October, just so you can get an idea. It was a really interesting experience, and before I do, Mike is he's a child in the most positive way. He's open. And I'm not like that. Miko knows I'm a little bit, neurotic perhaps, I don't know. I like to compartmentalize my time. I need to know what time I'm going to do this, what time. But when you go to Finland, time is an infliction.
Yes.
And so it's good for me because I'm always like, all right, this 10 o'clock I have my breakfast, 12 o'clock I have my, and it's terrible. I know it's terrible, It's a habit. We're all creatures of habit, right? It's refreshing to be in a different environment, but I have to make an effort to chill out and relax. I'm not a chilled out. I try to be, but I'm a bit anxious, a bit nervous about certain things. So it's a bit of a challenge for me just to forget about time and relax and all that kind of stuff. So it's been really refreshing for me. But Mike doesn't need to do any of that. He's already plugged in to just, it's a phrase I use a lot, I really like it, is do what happens. Let's go do what happens. There's no preconceived ideas, and this is where true creativity and spontaneity comes from. It's just by doing something without any pre-planning. And so, yeah, it was refreshing, and it made me relax. The fact that Mike was relaxed, it made everybody else relax too, from a musical standpoint. So let me just show you a little clip from our time there last October.
I might assume, I don't even know if I would assume, I think it's true, someone like Mike Keneally, I mean, that guy's just a freak. You could say, 6 months later, Frank could say, hey, let's play Alien Orifice. And Keneally will say, do you want me to play the melody on the guitar or the keyboard?
Mike Keneally.
So you're just trusting your ear, and finding the right sound. It's, you remind, music is sound. It's not technique. It's not talent even. It's sound.
So just to finish up, I mean, this project is really developed into a number of different areas, and I mean, from that experience, I have now been coming out with my community, so it's going to come out in the next month or so, and I'm just going to quickly play you a clip from that. What I wanted to try and do was capture some of the experiences we had in Finland, and make a recording, and the album is called Space Nordic, and I'm just going to play you a clip of what Camille has sent me recently. So that's it, just to finish up. Thanks for, listening to me talk for the last 40, 50 minutes. I just want to say it's a pleasure to be working with you all. It was really interesting to see what everyone is doing. I definitely see continuity in everything we're doing. We're all doing it in our own unique ways, but there's a consistency there. Where I'm standing from, I don't see any problems. I see it as a quite exciting, interesting challenge, and I think we should all embrace it and enjoy it, and be joyful to be collaborating in this way, because I think it's a wonderful project, and it's going to be really, really interesting research work. So thank you very much. If any of you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
How did your guitars stay in tune at minus 15 degrees?
Yeah.
Great difficulty.
Fingers.
-10, -10.
Yeah, -10. I mean, it was funny because we do a little shoot, 10, 15 minutes, and then I had to put the guitar down and I would just walk around and do that and then go back to it, because after 10 minutes your fingers just seize up.
And have you ever at some moment, because there is this relationship you have with your instrument, and have you been scared for them being that cold?
That was my problem.
Yeah, I also felt it.
Yeah, well, it's okay.
No.
After 10 minutes I just run around.
No, not you. I mean the instrument itself, because
The guitar.
it wasn't his. So it was yours.
No, I remember the correct.
Okay. Because that was an experience I had with musicians playing at the in Belgium at the coast, and they were really scared about the air humidity.
Well, the guitar, when you see the C crevice with my friend Fi, that acoustic guitar I'm playing is mine. It's a very expensive one, and I really adore it. So I was very hesitant about taking it, but I thought, if it gets damaged, so what? It's going to be worth it.
And?
It did get damaged. But it was just a scratch, because it was sand, so I had to put my guitar down for a minute to get the camera rolling, and it just scraped a little bit on the stones in the ground. But it's okay, because then I've got a momentum now.
Yeah.
I know where I got it from. I know what I was doing when it happened, and it was a good experience, so it's all good.
Well, I have a question. You said you tried to forget anything about music when you go just get inspiration, but you still have the body memory.
Yeah, that's a good point. So every musician has muscular memory, and there are certain habitual tendencies you have in performing an instrument. So that was a real challenge, is trying not to play chord shapes, melodies that I already know, because it defeats the purpose then. It then becomes exactly what I don't want it to be, which is preordained muscular memory. I want it to be purely on the spot. Of course, you need to have dexterity to do it in the first place. You know, you have to have imagination, you have that dexterity to be able to be spontaneous. But the idea is to try and not use a vocabulary that you use when you perform in conventional spaces. I think the best example of that was with Phi and myself in the cave there, because we decided that, because he's a guitarist too, and we decided that, okay, we're going to play stuff that we've never played before. And both of us just did these shapes. It didn't matter that we were coordinated harmonically. It was very dissonant when we played. It was like, let's just play any shape that we feel in this moment. And we just played these kind of, it's not on that clip, but we just played these chords. And that was special. Maybe it didn't sound great, but it was true improvisation in the moment. But it is a challenge sometimes because you can't help. But the thing is, when you're in the location, is there is no ego. There's none of that stuff that you get when you're in front of an audience. No one's there who cares. No one cares. You're just part of the environment, and therefore you're less inclined to play fast or play anything technical. You know, you just play what you're feeling at that time, and that's when it's really exciting. That's what I'm trying to do anyway with this work with Nico.
One thing came into my mind when about the soundscapes, like that, because when we had the kickoff meeting, we had discussion about the name of the project, because it was in the EU system, it's Nature Studio, but it's like official name is now Echoes of the Ancient. The Latvians were they thought that Nature Studio is better. But I must say that, especially now I understand that it's like, Echoes of the Ancient brings a much wider angle to the whole thing, because it's not only about recording into nature, it's so much more. And there's this, about soundscapes, I heard from, there's soundscape studies also have been in the OSU, that I heard the statement that, when you go from an urban area to the countryside, you are actually going back in the history of sound. Mm-hmm. And that's actually if we think of like echoes of the ancient, we are like hearing echoes from the silence, from echoes from when there wasn't this noise. Mm-hmm. So that's also somehow like, so that's one of the really let's say major points in the whole thing that we are doing.
And that's one of the first things which Mikko enabled me to do, because we had this talk that it would be so great to play in the woods and this kind of thing, but my voice is purely my true voice is purely on electric guitar, which is really affected. So it made that's Mikko's fault that you played with that amplifier, because that's kind of the thing which the whole idea where it comes from. It's before the echo thing and this and I truly feel that what Mikko said, because for me I have had this I tried to sound like something like Maynard from Tool and like a Pink Floyd thing and these kind of things, but I truly am not in technical sense as a player. I don't want. I'm not doing that, and that's not my thing. But sometimes it can be heard, but sometimes not. But that when I got to the nature, I suddenly realized that word, that I can play like 30 minutes straight, just improvising, and I don't really have this kind of vocabulary, and you have.
But I think sometimes that's
and now when I can see it as a strength, because I have enough to say things I have in my mind, and how my personal soundscape is in my head, and I can be a conduit for that. Like we have done those picnic trips to the ancient places in Heinävesi, which that's the main thing of me, like a musician, and I have been playing like only improvising, and I have, of course, I have some kind of basic structures which are the starting points and somewhere where I'm going, but mostly it's just noise from my head, and some crazy people think that that's kind of like music.
I think in some ways it's an advantage to not be, as you're saying, technically accomplished, let's say. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in some ways it's a problem when you've got, if you have technical ability, because you have to really try hard not to play techno, not to be flashy and all that, because no one cares about that. No one cares about that in the real world, let alone in a landscape there, you know, where there is no audience, it's just you and nature, you know, just two against nature. We use that Steely Dan album title, guitar, yourself, and nature. But I mean, this is one so I'm a composer, so when I compose music, I use the guitar. But in recent years, I've stopped doing that. I stopped playing stuff on the piano because I have no ability on the piano whatsoever. I know the theory, I know what the notes are, but I can't jam. I can't, you know, play it, and you know, I just go, well, wonder what happens if I do this, if I do that, and that's a really interesting way because it inspires new ideas. Because I'm not accomplished on it, and that's very. So going back to what you were saying as well, Nico, about that urban and the countryside, that's a really interesting perspective, isn't it? Because, yeah, it is true. You are going back in time. Yeah. It's the hi-fi sounds that Schaefer talks about. It's a natural sound. And that's what has stayed with me since I've been there. It's got profound experiences being in Heinävesi, you know, and being in those environments. It's not easy to experience that. You have to go to specific locations. And so, yeah, there is that sense you are going back in time. Yeah, that's a good perspective. It's a good way to look at it, I suppose.
And that's also a very good reason to have this project in place, like Heinävesi or Monchique, or this is like you know, that we get out of those urban areas.
Yeah,
with it.
absolutely.
Get the fuck out of there.
Okay, so thank you, Chanan.